Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, November 13th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Maryland game is in 6 days, the game against Michigan in 13 days. Ohio State just knocked off Indiana in their penultimate home game of the season. I'm here with Kevin Noon inside the Ohio Stadium press box, wrapping up the Buckeyes' 56-14 win over Indiana. Kevin, there's a lot of places we could start with this, but it feels like the thing that everyone's going to remember from this game was Kamryn Babb, and Kamryn Babb getting his first career touchdown catch. That was one of the cooler moments I remember in it was not the deciding play of a game. It was just the moment itself was just so powerful.
And obviously Ohio State fans are going to appreciate it more than anybody, because I think anybody who's followed this team knows just all of the setbacks Kamryn Babb has dealt with ACLs going back into his high school career, costing him his senior season. He's going to be healthy going into this year, and then he gets another setback, and then for him to be able to get out there and get that touchdown, and the way that, there weren't a lot of fans left. About halftime, everybody's like, I've seen enough. So the crowds were smaller than they were at the beginning, probably still smaller than the announced 103,000 that I'm not buying. But C.J. Stroud comes out there, and they're down in the red zone, and he gets the touchdown, and it was just, it was a great moment. We always talk about we're not out there rooting or anything. We're just, we're impartial. But when CJ dropped and I saw the pattern that Babb was running, I'm like, if there's any justice, please let this kid catch this. And he did.
Yeah, it was a very cool moment, and it felt like everyone in the stadium kind of knew. Like, you saw him warming up before that drive, and it was like, oh, this is something that we anticipated on the pregame show. We talked about the fact that, hey, he's not on the availability report, which means he's available today, which means if they're up big, boy, would this be a great day for this to finally happen for him. And, it was only, the media and the players and the diehards there at the very end, and it felt like everyone in the stadium was kind of looking and going, you're going to throw it to him, right? Because that was not the first play of the drive. It was they got all the way down into the red zone inside the 10-yard line and then threw it to him. Yeah, and then the outpouring from his teammates. He went to his knees on the sideline and had the teammates there. And then as he's running across the end zone all the way back to the bench, there's more teammates there. And then the whole team came down and greeted him in the end zone. That was just, you could tell what that moment meant, not just to Kamryn Babb, but to the whole team who has watched him go through this for so long.
It would have been very easy for them to throw a flag for excessive celebration or whatever. Ohio State still did end up getting flagged because they weren't able to get the point after off in time, and then they took another one with a false start. But it was great. I saw Emeka Egbuka. He had a tear in his eye. And I saw that he posted something somewhere else that he hasn't cried that much in a long time. It was just so much. I talked to Jack Sawyer after the game, and I said, Jack, I know a different position, but everybody on this team deals with injuries. Just what did you see with the Kamryn Babb situation? He's like, oh, that nearly made me cry too. So obviously a very emotional moment. Cam said after the game that he hadn't really processed it all yet. It was still kind of a blur. But hats off to the kid for sticking with it, because it would have been very easy to sit there and say, I guess this just isn't meant to be. But it was.
Well, and if you look at the reaction, that tells you pretty much everything you need to know about what he is and who he is as a person and how his teammates view him. But the other piece of that is, had never had a catch, and was a captain, was the Blowout jersey recipient. That is someone who that is how Ohio State football shows respect. And to do that for someone who has not earned it on the field, so to speak, that tells you exactly who he is and how people view him off the field. And in a program where there are a lot of very impressive kids in that program, so to be the guy who stands out for your off the field stuff within that program, that's just that's why everyone was excited. That's why everyone was anticipating that moment, and that's why you saw the reaction. So definitely the most memorable moment. not the most impactful moment in terms of the outcome of the game. That there was a lot that came earlier in the game that was a little more impactful in terms of why that game was over relatively early. I guess let's start with the running backs. Ohio State had not run the ball real well for several weeks in a row. Indiana, Penn State, Northwestern, and there was a different reason for each of them. And Indiana, Penn State, Iowa, Penn State, and Northwestern. I don't know if I said the right. I think I said Indiana earlier, but yes. Whatever it was, 3 weeks in a row, they hadn't run the ball well. But Indiana came in and was averaging 3.6 yards per carry allowed, and it was like, okay, this is going to be a little bit of a test, and we'll see how Ohio State runs the ball against Indiana. And then Ohio State kind of did whatever they wanted to against Indiana. They rushed the ball, 43 carries, 351 yards, 7.9 yards per carry. And, there's a 71-yarder in there for Xavier Johnson that skews it a little bit, but Miyan Williams, 9.8 yards per carry, Dallan Hayden, 5.4 yards per carry. I mean, that was impressive.
Yeah, it was really nice to see them get out there and be able to do some things. The line was constructed a little differently. DeJuan Jones was unable to go, so you end up having Josh Fryer out there. And I'm not sitting there, stumping for a change, but they seemed to make the most out of the situation there. The line got a really good push. I mean, there were a couple times that maybe it wasn't as great as others, but, Miyan Williams, before he left the game, was running as hard as I've seen him run in a long time. Dallan Hayden, showed a lot of wiggle, showed the ability to really kind of find that extra gear and go. So, we're going to come out of this game, and it's going to be a lot of people are going to say, well, it was Indiana. And, Tom threw out the stat there of what they were allowing, 3.6, 3.8, whatever, what have you, at that point. But Ohio State had such struggles running the ball that, there's a lot of good to take out of there. Now, me, I like to throw a little negativity in there because I'm just the eternal pessimist. Still not doing so well on 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, but and Ryan Day said that he kind of wanted to bang his head into the wall with some of that. But overall, I mean, you have to be very happy with where the running game was in general.
Yeah, it was, this was a game where I think we all came in and said there's almost nothing you could see from Ohio State that would materially change how you viewed them against Michigan. Like there's stuff they're going to have to do against Michigan before you believe they can do it against Michigan. But they also didn't give you any reason on Saturday to doubt that they could do it against Michigan. It all looked like you would have hoped it would look against a not particularly great defense or not particularly great opponent overall. Miyan Williams had, like you said, a very impressive game, ran really hard, hit some big plays, and then limped off with what looked like a really bad injury. He was putting no weight on the right ankle. He was putting almost no weight on the left leg, which was a little weird.
That makes it difficult.
Yeah. So, what did Ryan Day have to say about Miyan Williams after the game?
Said it wasn't season ending. We're still trying to learn to decipher some of the things that he says. Basically, what I took from it was, it's not going to be, I don't think it's a case of him being back next week, but it wasn't going to be something that was going to cost him potentially into, let's say, January if the season allowed that. But, I'm not expecting to see him at that point. Miyan Williams did go to social and say all good, but, we've seen that before from other players, and you just don't know. And you got to figure in a lot of ways, too. There's still going to be more time for evaluation and everything else. And, whether or not it was a high ankle sprain or something else, everything has a little bit of a different path.
Mm-hmm. And, something like an ankle sprain, that's one of those things where you could play the next week, or you could wait a week and then play the week after that, or you could wait a week after that. And, I mean...
Well, ask JSN about, his hamstring.
Mm-hmm, exactly, yeah. And everything is a little bit of... There's a little bit of it depends with all of this stuff. Dallan Hayden, if Miyan Williams is not able to go, and I think Travion Henderson is expected back next week against Maryland, so okay, maybe you just switch out your backs, and Miyan Williams doesn't play next week, and then Travion Henderson does. But if they do have to go to Dallan Hayden, or Dallan Hayden has to start the game, or whatever it is, it's starting to feel like maybe they can trust Dallan Hayden to take on a bigger role in this team, because he's so far it hasn't been incredible. This hasn't been Maurice Clarett in 2002, but for a true freshman, he really hasn't given them any reason to doubt him either.
Yeah, you get a true freshman out there, and you worry about ball security. You worry about a lot of little things at that point. And so far, Dallan Hayden has passed all of the tests. And as Tom mentioned, it's not like he's gone out there and hit a bunch of 40-yard home run, type of bursts out there. But he's going out there and he's as advertised. He's getting the runs he should get. I mean, he's breaking a couple of things here and there. I mean, he seems to make smart decisions. He has the patience to sit there and wait for the hole to open up. There are a lot of things that are going on that you don't always necessarily see out of a true freshman back. Yes, you would like to have your 1-2 punch of Trevion Henderson and Miyan Williams, certainly, but as you go into Maryland, a team that put up 27 yards of offense against Penn State, and Ohio State assuredly will be a pretty big favorite in that game, there's no reason to put yourself behind the 8 ball with anybody in that game if you can kind of get away with Dallan Hayden, and then if Chip Trayanum is able to return at running back since he was held out of this game, with seeing where things stand at that point.
Yeah, and just the Penn State game, Maryland game is not final yet, but as of the time we're recording this, it's 30-0 Penn State, and Maryland has not put up much of a fight. So
it's a final.
Yeah, the game is over. The score is not final, but the game is over. Yeah, and Penn State, Maryland at home versus Maryland on the road is always a pretty big difference. So we'll see. We'll get a chance to talk a bunch about Maryland, but yeah, I did want to talk a little bit also about Marvin Harrison Jr. Kamryn Babb was not the only person who caught a touchdown pass on Saturday. Marvin Harrison Jr., just another day where 7 catches, 135 yards, 1 touchdown, long of 58, and the stats themselves are wow stats, and that doesn't even give you the how he did it, because the catch on the sideline where it looked like he was going to be 2 feet out of bounds and somehow pulled the 1 foot up and then got the other foot down was right up there with the Jackson Smith-Njigba catch against Nebraska in 2020, or some of the other the one-handed Devin Smith catch against Miami in 2012. I mean, some of the really iconic, just how on earth did he do that catches? Even for Marvin Harrison, that was a wow play.
Yeah, he certainly is able to jack that degree of difficulty score up if he needs to. I mean, we've seen backs before that have been able to make the routine look difficult and the difficult look easy. I mean, but he makes everything look so easy out there. And there was another catch too of where he had to kind of readjust his body to be able to get one going. It was on the Ohio State sideline, and there were a lot of people up in the press box that were like, ooh. But the one you're talking about, a lot of people were like, well, I don't know if he caught that. Well, when we saw the replay, he absolutely was able to sit there and have 1 foot go down before the other. I mean, just to have the body control to do that. I trip up the stairs half the time. So, I'm just in awe of somebody who's able to do something like that.
Kevin Noon, not as good of an athlete as Marvin Harrison Jr., exclusive Must Credit Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning podcast. Let's talk a little defense. And this felt like we only got to talk to 3 players after the game, and it was C.J. Stroud, right? It's Ryan Day, C.J. Stroud, Lathan Ransom. We'll get to special teams and Lathan Ransom in a minute, but the other guy we talked to was Jack Sawyer, and he has not he came in with JT Tuimoloau as a 5-star player and the 5-star defensive end in the class of 2021. So I think the expectation was he's just going to do what JT Tuimoloau does. And JT Tuimoloau is producing at a level right now that is not fair to expect of anyone. Jack Sawyer is on more of a normal trajectory. But Saturday felt like a little bit of a level up game for him, where you can sort of start to maybe see the pieces clicking into place, where he has the athleticism, he has the quickness and the strength, and just the Larry Johnson talks about the bend, that he has all the physical traits that you would want for a defensive end. It felt Saturday like maybe you're starting to see some of that stuff kind of fall into place.
And it was really nice, too, because he was going against a quarterback who was much more of a run threat than a pass threat. So kind of what to expect there. But I mean, he was out there. I mean, he delivered a blow on one of the sacks. I mean, he got out there and just ragdolled the poor guy. Like on the second time he got to him, it was a flash of everything that I'd seen out of him coming out of Pickerington. Where he played his high school ball down the street from me. I was very happy to see him finally have a game where he was able to get home, because he's been so close on so many plays. There've just been, I mean, teams speed up a little bit against Ohio State because they know what kind of pass rush that the Buckeyes can have. They just haven't been able to get home. And with what Sawyer was able to do, just it was all put together today. And now, what does that mean against Maryland? Well, we'll find out. But sometimes success breeds success.
And, success can breed confidence, too. I mean, C.J. Stroud talked last week about the fact that running the ball against Northwestern gave him confidence to run the ball again. And, running the ball, C.J. Stroud is a very good athlete. So this is, that should not be something that, C.J. Stroud's in the back of his head going, can I run the ball? Well, sometimes it just takes doing it. And Jack Sawyer did it on Saturday. Someone else who has just been doing it all season long is Lathan Ransom. And the safeties have been so good on this defense this year. And Lathan Ransom has been a big part of why the back end of that defense, in this Jim Knowles safety-driven defense, the back end of that defense has been so good. And then he also made a really big play on special teams as well.
Yeah, with getting out there, getting Ohio State's first punt block of the season. Very athletic play out there with what he was able to do, and just everything he's been able to do in the secondary. And I know I've said it before, we're not that far removed from a catastrophic injury in the Rose Bowl. I thought at that point, I was like, well, anything we see out of him in 22 is gravy. Well, I mean, it's been a lot more than just gravy. It's been the whole damn dinner with what he's been able to do out there. And Ohio State, for all of the injuries that the Buckeyes do have, the back end of the defense is starting to round into form. They're mostly healthy at this point. We had an opportunity to see what maybe people thought would be the starting corners this year. I mean, obviously, I think we didn't see Denzel Burke, but when we saw Cam Brown and we saw Jordan Hancock out there, just the safety play has been so great with Ransom and McAllister, et cetera, and Ronnie Hickman going on. But with Ransom standing out from the group, and just with what everything has been able to do, has just been one of those great stories.
Yeah, and another person who you have to feel good for, guys coming back off of really serious injury who can make can get back on the field and then make an impact, and it doesn't completely derail their career or derail their season. Just that was a bad leg injury. He and Josh Proctor both had bad lower leg breaks in the season. Proctor was against Oregon, and he was back kind of for spring ball. They were sort of ramping him up for spring ball. Ransom really didn't get back on the field in any meaningful way until fall camp, really. And Jim Knowles talked about really not knowing what he had with Lathan Ransom, because you didn't know how long he was going to be out. You didn't know when he was really going to be able to be back in, and how quickly he would be able to catch up. And he has turned into a very pleasant surprise, to the point where you almost forget about it. You don't think about it anymore. That was kind of a big story with him at the beginning of the year. It has not been. It's sort of been a forgotten thing recently, which that's what you want. You don't want the injuries to be the constant story with you. So yeah, that is a very big thing for Ohio State. We are heading into the very much home stretch of the regular season. Kevin and Tony and I will be at Maryland coming up next weekend. We have the Maryland game, and then of course the Michigan game. It is hard to believe we are that close, that we're right now 8 days away from the Michigan press conferences for the Ohio State-Michigan game. 9 days away from the Ohio.
Where did it all go?
9 days away from the Ohio State press conferences for the Ohio State-Michigan game. It is going to be quite a busy couple weeks on BuckeyeHuddle.com as we head into that. And then Ohio State's going to play at least one more game, and possibly as many as 3 more games after that Michigan game. So this would be a fantastic time to become a member of BuckeyeHuddle.com. Fantastic team of insiders. Kevin, Tony, and I all covering the team. Mark Givler, Alex Gleitman killing it on the recruiting beat. And we just added, we have 4. We have 4 X's and O's guys, 4 scheme guys. So you're gonna join BuckeyeHuddle.com, and you're gonna be a much smarter football fan. You're gonna have the insight from our recruiting guys. You're gonna have the insight on the team. You're also gonna have the insight on when you see stuff on the field, what does it mean? Why are they doing the things that you're doing? Those guys very insightful, also do a great job explaining that stuff. There's a whole thread on our board, on the Huddle board at BuckeyeHuddle.com, just about X's and O's, where they will, you have a question, they're like, this is one of these, there are no stupid questions things. Get a little smarter about football. Sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Less than 50 cents a day, and gonna be a pretty eventful couple weeks.
Yeah.
Let me just spoil the surprise for you. In the lead up to the Michigan game, you are going to be going. When is the game yet here? I want to hear more about this team. I want to watch more about this team. I want to read more about this team. Well, sign up today at BuckeyeHuddle.com, and that will solve your problem for that week. You're welcome. This is a service industry here, Kevin. We are here to serve the people. We would love to see you there at BuckeyeHuddle.com. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.